Hello, my name is Heather Scalf, and I'm the Assessment Director here at the University of Texas at Arlington Libraries. I'd like to talk with you today about academic libraries and learning analytics as part of the professional learning community devoted to learning analytics for the spring of 2017. So first we want to talk about defining what is learning analytics. It is a term of art. It is a current topic in higher education. Basically, learning analytics is the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting all of the components of data about learners and their contexts so that we can understand better what the optimal environments might be for our learners, for our students, what those environments are and how we can optimize them, change them, make them better in order to help our students be more successful. So this is a great definition from 2011. And it's a great place to start when you want to understand what learning analytics is all about. So the UT Arlington Libraries in 2014 underwent a physical renovation of our first floor, our entryway. And you can see some beautiful photos here of of that entryway, our big Arlington logo in the floor with a star. We got on either side of the entry, we've got dirt walls, the large glass walls that we use for display and conversation with our users, and you can see a couple of kind of information exhibit things here. And the photo of the gates is starred. In 2014, as part of that renovation, we actually added card swipe entry access into the Central Library. The Central Library is one of 3 facilities. It is the largest one. It is open 24/5, so we open at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning and close at 8 p.m. on Friday evening. Currently, we're actually going to be going to 24/7 in the fall of 2017. But you can see here on the gates, on the top of each one on the right side, are card readers. So each person who enters the library, our affiliates, students, faculty, and staff, will swipe their Maverick ID card through those card readers, and the data is captured through the card reader and is sent to MavExpress, which is the entity here at UT Arlington that maintains all of the access data about all of the facilities across campus, not just the libraries. The activities center, labs and classrooms, they maintain all of that data. So this retrieves their ID number and the date and time that they swiped. We have 2 card readers going into the library, and we have 2 card readers coming out of the library. So we are able to get entry time and exit time by doing a little bit of programming with that data when we download it from MavExpress. The data is downloaded once a semester, generally, unless we have a specific project that we're working on, such as this project where we want to look at a particular group of students and determine some particular attributes of their behavior related to library resources. In general, as I said, we do download the data once a semester, and from that we can get information such as the busiest times in the library, finding out what hours of the day do the most people come in and how much time do most people spend in the library. If someone comes in at noon, they might spend on average about 90 minutes in the library, but for those who come in at 10 or 11 p.m., they are spending more than 200 minutes in the library, and that is average based on the number of users who come in. So even though the number of users, unique users, may decline for an interval, the amount of time that they're spending is quite a bit higher. This allowed us to have some conversations that changed some business practices for us and some of our partners. So this is what our library learning analytics database looks like. This is the database that we have created using the MavExpress data represented here on the top left, information from Voyager, which is our integrated library system, so that's about checkout of materials, interlibrary loan, what we borrow from other universities and other locations, Our Open Room program, which is an open source application that students use in order to reserve one of our 14 study rooms across the 3 libraries. The Fab app, which is a homegrown database which captures user ID information and date time of use and type of device used in our Fab Lab. And then EasyProxy data. That is, EasyProxy is our open source, open URL identifier, and it's when students are logging into, or affiliates are logging in from off campus into library resources, they would log in using EasyProxy. We also import some demographic data from a couple of campus sources, and all of that data then goes into the Libland server, the Libland database on the Libland server. You can see it's a MySQL database. All of the files are converted to SQL, loaded into that MySQL database. And from that, they are then processed and transferred to an MS Access database for usage by various users. So we have gate count information that are, the counts themselves are extracted from that Mav Express information. And that is simply at 10 a.m. on the 1st of September, there were 42 people who entered the building. Those counts are available to all library staff. The specific information, or the much more detailed information about student demographic information, is only available to me as the Director of Assessment. And there is actually another process that happens before I am able to access that data. We are taking data and data privacy very, very seriously. These are a couple of sample views from tables that are in the Libland database that I have access to for analysis. And one of the things that we do, there are a couple of significant processes. Each affiliate has a 10-digit identifier. That's an EMPL ID. Starts with 1,000 or 6,000 or something like that. So each of those unique IDs is what is recorded in most of our data sources. Let's say our Mav Express, our gate count. We're recording that 10-digit ID, date time of swipe, and the card location, the reader location for the swipe. When we extract that data from Mav Express, there is a process that our systems librarian does, a salted hash process, which is 2 distinct processes. So that 10-digit ID has 236 random characters, letters and numbers, added to it, inserted, intermingled, mixed with, added to it in the salting process. So we now have a 10-digit number that has now been scrambled with 236 other random characters and numbers in a salting process. For each entry in each table, my particular ID number, for example, mine would receive the same process at the same time. So if I were to be able to look up my own ID, which I can't, I would find that mine was represented by the same now 246 character letter number combination in all tables. Not only do we add the salt information to each ID, however, we also run it through a hashing, one-way hash algorithm, so that these 246 characters, randomized and scrambled with the ID, are now also completely scrambled and changed and flipped. So in most cases the numbers are, everything is completely changed. So now we have 246 characters that have been completely changed. In each data source, the same 246 character string represents the same individual, but there is no connection whatsoever to that original 10-digit ID, and the process is not reversible. So it is a one-way hash. It is designed to be that way, so that we're doing everything that we can to keep that data private. You can see for the easy proxy log here, you can see the ID hashes, a small sampling of those. What we are capturing is only data from these data sources that is relevant to the sort of business questions and the work that we're doing here at the libraries. So for easy proxy data, for instance, you can see request date, the IP address they were at, what kind of connection. They're all proxy connections. And then the destination host, which is simply the resource provider. We do not keep the particular resource that they might access, the online journal or the particular database. You can see here it's we know that this first user has accessed an Ovid resource, but Ovid provides a great number of our online resources. I don't need to know which ones they're accessing. It is similar to our policy on checkout of library materials. The data that we retain and that we thus then extract into Libland is only that 3 books were checked out. We do not retain in our ILS the information about which books were checked out, only that you as a user have checked out 42 books in your history as a user, for example. So we've gone a long way toward making this data anonymous and also protecting it so that we can do analysis at the level that we need to here in the libraries, but we are not going to have a database that would have everything that anyone has ever done and every resource they've ever accessed. That is intentional. One of the things you can see from the student data view, and this is information, obviously the ID hash, their classification, their major, their grade point average, which is a computation that is done in Libland, are, for instance, looking at ethnicity and gender. In the source database for this information about our affiliates, those fields are optional. So affiliates are not required to complete them. Thus, the data that's in our view tables in this case and in the database in some cases is incomplete. So we are aware of that. We understand that sometimes there are going to be occasions when the data is not going to be completely 100% clean and perfect, but it is allowing us to begin to get some snapshot information about the students who are using library resources. So what we've learned so far, when we started doing some analysis in the fall of 2015 at a request by the Dean of the Libraries, we wanted to know which students were visiting the library most often, students from which colleges and schools. So as we began to look at the data from MapExpress and linking that to the student data view, we were able to see that students who were in a major from the College of Engineering accessed the Central Library more than any other student group. They were closely followed by students from the College of Science and students from the College of Business. And you can see we have architecture and public planning is a fairly low number, but we do have a library facility in the architecture building, so it was not surprising to us to see that. It was very interesting to see, though, that we do have a high number of engineering and science students accessing the Central Library because there is a library in the basement of Netterman Hall, which is where a lot of the engineering courses are, and it is the Science and Engineering Library, so it is rather interesting to see the percentage of entries into the Central Library by students who actually have a facility in another building. So the question for the purposes of PLC, and I partnered with Kim Brewer from the Department of History, is did students enrolled in History 3300 in the fall semester of 2016 use library resources? So we were able to obtain a data set of ID numbers of students who were enrolled in History 3300 during that semester and add that into the Libland database, resalt, rehash the entire database, and then evaluate the usage of those students of library resources. So the two that I chose to look at initially were physical use of the central library facility. Our special collections is on the 6th floor. These students receive bibliographic instruction and some tutoring in how to use the particular unique primary resources that we have in special collections. So we knew that we had something here in the building that they would want. So that was the starting point for kind of finding out how they're using the building. And the second was looking at their usage of online resources. So looking at those easy proxy logs for this particular cohort of students and being able to answer some questions about their usage of materials. Again, because the easy proxy log does not indicate by design what resource they accessed, it could be that students accessed resources from off-campus for classes that are not related to History 3300. We know that. This is just a broad overview of those particular students' sources. So what we discovered is that of the 18 enrolled students whose information we received, about half of them visited the Central Library during that fall semester. So you can see in the image on the left the number of visits. The two graphics, the two images here, each colored bar is the same student. You can sort of see the ID hash at the bottom, but you can see that the lowest number of visits was 2 and the highest number of visits was 22. The least amount of time spent on visits was just over 20 minutes, with the greatest amount of time, average time spent on those visits was 214 minutes. So the purple student visited the library 14 times for an average of 214 minutes for each of those 14 visits. So it's really interesting to be able to determine this, again, looking at this one small cohort. And again, only half the students that were enrolled in the course that completed the capstone project for this course actually visited the Central Library. So that is really interesting information to start with. It will be really even more interesting to see how that correlates to grade. The other thing that we discovered when we analyzed the logs for off-campus access to our resources was that all 18 students had indeed accessed our resources from off-campus. The lowest number of logins was 9, and the highest number was more than 700. So we had some students that were very, very actively using resources, logging in from off-campus, and others less so. We do know that there are a number of variables. It could be that those students are accessing those same resources that they need while they're here in the building. So there's further analysis that needs to be done. One of the challenges of doing this kind of analysis and looking at library usage broadly, whether that's physical usage of the space or use of online resources, is that we cannot eliminate all of the possible variables in order to just make a straight causal relationship between student use of library resources and student success, be that GPA, course grade, retention, or graduation. The best we can do is attempt to limit some of the variables to control for those things and be able to look at developing relationships and correlations so that we can talk about what we know to be true here in the libraries, that students who are more familiar, who have greater access and ability in dealing with our resources, are more successful when they're doing research projects and finding the things that they need in order to complete their coursework. So the next steps, again, the current data set has the overall GPA, but not the course grade for this particular course. We do not have their final course grade. And because there's so many variables involved in evaluating that correlation, We're going to begin by investigating a correlation between resource usage and course grade. So I'm going to need to gather some more data and do some more analysis in order to determine that. And then we will build from there.